Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host Greg Thompson along with my partner in crime Aaron Quinn. We're almost there. How we doing?
Well, host, but more importantly, birthday boy. Happy birthday, boy.
Yeah. I am officially 40 years old, whether I like it or not. And it's not bad. I feel slightly not different than 39 and a half. So it's going okay. But yeah, I've had a wonderful birthday. Lots of well wishes from people online and throughout social media and my regular life. Had a really cool party this weekend. For anyone who didn't see, my wife got me an awesome present and a message from Bruce Smith, my favorite all-time player, which was awesome and a crazy surprise and a really cool thing that my wife kept secret from everyone and figured out. And lots of well wishes from people like yourself and other lovely people in my life. So it's been a great day, and I feel loved and appreciated, and that's a nice way to celebrate 40.
Absolutely. You must have got some of the sunshine we got over here in Buffalo. Your birthday too, so that's nice.
Yeah,
I didn't get you anything for your birthday except for just saying happy birthday, except I wore my Yes We Chan shirt.
I love it
for you.
Oh, I love Chan Gailey. I miss him. He was a good man and someone that we deserve to enjoy more in our lives, but alas, we should move on. We're almost there, man. It's been a long while. I am very much ready for this NFL draft. It's crazy, but before we get there was huge breaking news by the Buffalo Bills. We re-signed Ike Boettger.
Yeah.
I think most people thought we had already done that when we tendered him. Officially, you don't actually re-sign the player until they sign their tender. For some reason, Ike Boettger did that on Tuesday, but he is now officially just hanging out, waiting to see if maybe, I guess, somebody could have offered a contract that he could have then gotten us a second round pick or something. I don't believe that was ever going to happen, so good for him. He signed his tender, and honestly, $2.1 million is a pretty good haul for a backup guard, and good for him for getting the money. As we work our way into this, I think it's a good time to kind of talk about all these last minute stories and all the things that, we'll go through a lot of them coming up here. How do you kind of parse what's a rumor, what's a smoke screen, what's just GMs doing their job? How do you figure out the difference of what all these things that come up last minute?
Well, I think just years of kind of doing this, both breaking down the Bills and just being a fan, I think there's some things that we can look at about this team and we can deduct sort of where the fluff is and where the rubber meets the road in terms of, like, we'll get right into it. For instance, with Etienne and him being rumored to the Bills, and then there's rumors of a possible trade up. Well, the rumors to the Bills make sense, right? We've heard this from Albright months ago that the Bills were all in on addressing the running back position possibly in this draft. We saw Najee Harris going early in the mock draft season to the Bills. So there's been speculation around the running back position with the Bills. So, okay, that makes sense. We're hearing multiple mocks of him at 30 to the Bills from guys that are pretty connected in the league, the Peter Kings, the Ben Albrights. Todd McShay's kind of a fraud, I think. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, he has some – ESPN keeps paying him for these opinions. So he's there. But I think – you said it best. Maybe, and you can explain it better. The trade up scenario is probably where the smoke screen is for Etienne. But I think the interest in running back at 30 is very much real, even though I think Bill's Twitter tried to kill that for the last 3 months. And I thought almost successfully, but here we are again, draft eve, talking about running backs to the Bills.
Yeah, I think that it's, we'll add in a couple others. I think that the report Josh Reed put out an interview with Brandon Beane today about getting phone calls at pick 30 of teams that might want to move back in for a second first rounder. I think those things, the reports of checking in with teams in the early 20s to gauge the price in case they want to move up, and the interest in Travis Etienne individually are all real. Like, I do think the Bills are interested in Travis Etienne. I do believe that Brandon Beane checked in with teams in the early 20s to gauge the price in case they want to move up. I do believe that he took calls from teams that want to move into the first round and then moving back out of the second. I think connecting the dots on those, that he wants to move up for Travis Etienne, that's a guess. That's a
Sure.
dart throw.
Right.
Or that he's going to trade out of the first round and trade down. That's a guess. I think all those things are just kind of smokescreen and guesses, but it doesn't mean that they're not based in truth. And I think that we talked a lot pre-show. That's a GM's job. Like, you're literally not doing your job if you're not calling all of those teams. They've checked in with every team from like pick 16 on just to gauge the price. Hey, just poking around. You guys taking feelers for trading up. We're not looking to do anything crazy. And if they find a team that's, some teams are wanting to pick but willing to listen. Some teams want to move down and are interested in moving down. If you find those teams that you don't have to overpay grossly, and that, hey, you might be able to get a slight value on moving up, especially in a year where everyone's talking about trading down. When everyone wants to trade down, sometimes trading up can be done at a value, and you get it for better than what it is. Now, most of the time, most of the numbers tell you that it's better off not to trade up for anything other than a quarterback, and I get where those things come from. But sometimes when there's a big tier drop-off, and we'll talk about some of those coming up here with cornerback and defensive end, that some of those things drop off kind of quick, and that maybe you do want to move up and be able to snag someone like that. I think they're just doing their due diligence to check in with those guys.
Yeah, and you don't know what the scenarios are. I think, this is why they do the mock draft scenarios, to see what potentially could go on. I don't think they do mock drafts and say, oh, we did 100 mock drafts and this guy was available at 32 80 times. Like that he'll probably be available. I think they're doing it for the contingency plans, to say, hey, we've made these calls to 16, 17, 18. This weird mock scenario we went through, Pitts is there, and we want to get it. Like, we've already called to know that these are realistic things that we can get up and get these guys if somebody falls. We've seen crazy stuff happen in the draft. If you're a good GM, you're preparing for all of it. And the one thing we know about Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane is they're like probably really annoyingly preparing for things. They're the kind of
Yes.
bosses that keep you there for 3 extra hours to just check every box just to make sure.
Sean McDermott for sure does that.
Yeah, they're super annoying. 100. I would not want to work for those guys. But that's what makes them great at their jobs, right? So to think that they're not checking all these boxes or going through every scenario possible that they can come up with before this night, so that when it hops up, they're not frantically trying to get on the phone with these people and figure it out. Like, you have some idea, rough idea of what things are going into the night. So I agree with you 100% that, you can hear all these different reports, but they don't all interconnect in these ways. And the problem with Buffalo Bills, and this has been something that Bills fans have had to get used to, none of this information or leaks, I don't believe, is coming out of One Bills Drive. You're getting this from agents of players. You're getting this from other teams who are saying, we talked to the Buffalo Bills or people. So we know that none of it's coming out intentionally. I don't think Brandon Beane's throwing out smoke intentionally. I don't think he cares about that stuff, but he knows that other teams are going to release some of that information. So I don't think anyone can connect it, because I don't believe that it's coming out of One Bills Drive. So you're getting bits and pieces from different sources and connecting those stories. If this was still the Rex Ryan led Doug Whaley Bills and there was leaks coming out of this place like crazy, I'd be say that maybe it's coming from one of the scouts. Like, somebody's leaking to the media. I believe that in a heartbeat, but we're not getting that from this Bills team.
Yeah. So later on in the show, we're going to take a handful of questions. There's a couple that are in there that we can address quick. I know people asking about possible trades for Zach Ertz, and I know a couple other guys were commenting, why would you want to give up an asset for there? I had done a mock where, and I've seen other people speculate that the Bills could trade down with the Eagles, and as part of the trade down, you get Zach Ertz back for it. The trade down of just going from 30 to 37 is roughly a third-round pick value. The Eagles are already trying to get a third-round pick value and haven't been able to, so I don't see why the Bills would all of a sudden do that. Now, I've seen some where it's the Eagles' fourth-round pick and Ertz for trading down to 37, something like that. And the reason that you would do that is if Zach Ertz gets released, he's going to Indianapolis to sign with Carson Wentz. Like, you're trading a low day 3 value for exclusive negotiating rights because you want the player and don't want him to go to Indianapolis, because if he gets released, he's going to play with his best friend Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. He's not going to come sign here, so that's the possibility. There's a couple more. Azor asked, how was your 50th birthday, Greg? How dare you? The other, Devontae Smith slides because of his build and Bean trades up for him. What would you think of a player like that who's not speculated to Buffalo at all of a sudden starts to slide, and that's the kind of trade up you see.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the calls are made, right? Like, that maybe is a scenario. I think that story's way overblown by the media's running with that, and Twitter's running with that, and a lot of experts. I don't think NFL scouts are looking at that kid and thinking that they're concerned about putting something on his body. Like, he's a special talent.
Chad Johnson said he played almost his whole career in the 170s, and it was never an issue.
This kid's going to be fine. I'm not worried about him at all. And if he's there, then I get what you said about you don't make those like big moves. And I'm team trade up all day. I don't want to trade up, but I'm fine with it. Like, you know me, I don't care about the picks and stuff. We can figure all this stuff out later. If a real talent's there, go get him. If he was there, dude, I would have no problem. And it would be embarrassing to admit if anyone could hear my phone calls about what I'd be willing to give up to go get him. Because that kind of talent falls, you got to go get it. Like, it's just silly. So no, but I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be a great wide receiver in the NFL and one of the top 10 teams.
So hold your other questions till the end of the show. We are going to do a question segment, and we'll take some of those in. It's funny, Sam brings up a topic here that we had talked about pre-show. One of the bigger rumors out there right now is, I don't know that there's new information, but it's been very broadly brought to light how much injury concern there is with Caleb Farley. And now the recent rumor is some teams think that he needs another surgery already and may even be a red shirt this year. So anyone who doesn't know, Caleb Farley is a phenomenal athlete, cornerback from Virginia Tech, came as a wide receiver, converted over to cornerback, and then played phenomenal, having never played cornerback before. Then had a weird deadlifting injury where he compressed a vertebrae and had to have a microdiscectomy, and then had to have another of those procedures after sitting out the season because of COVID concerns and the injury concerns. Had to have a second surgery. He also tore an ACL in there at one point, so a crazy injury history, but a guy that if he had no injury concerns might be a top 5 pick, like a Jalen Ramsey kind of cornerback. It's really tough because that's the kind of guy you would never be able to get at pick 30, but is a huge risk. What do you think? I'll ask you specifically about Farley, and then in general, players like that. What are your thoughts on them, and then how the Bills approach a guy like that with that many potential red flags, but that much upside?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, obviously, because we see it's a need. So I think everyone was very focused on the cornerback position, right? And a month ago, it was hopefully this guy's injuries will have him fall to the Bills at 30.
I was in that boat.
Yeah, now we're hearing from Albright today that he doesn't even have him in the first round based off what he's hearing around the league about these concerns. My problem with Farley is it's 1 year of production, right? Like, I know that he came into this late and he turned it around, but it's 1 year of production. So even without the injuries, I get what people are saying and what they see as film. I don't know that he's still the top guy in this class without the injury issues. I still think Surtain and Horn are probably the top guys, and I'm comfortable there. But then you add in the injury history. So there's a question about, hey, all right, we've seen it 1 year, this kid. That's enough to get him in the first round and draft him on some potential, and you can live with that. But that's still a pretty high risk, right? To go with a guy with just 1 year, doesn't have a lot of experience. He's got some really nice cover skills, but he's still got to get a little bit more physical to play at the NFL level too. And Sean McDermott's going to require some physicality of his corners in that run support game. That's why Levi Wallace is back on this team and Taron Johnson stays on this team, is that run support stuff. So not sure he's all there yet either. It's tough for me, man, because my first reaction today was I think he's off my board for round 1. But then at the same time, I wonder, the Bills are probably, of most of these teams, in a position to redshirt a guy. This is the thing we've been saying all along. Like, it's where I'm at with running back. Like, I think the Bills can take these risks that maybe the analytics community or the draft community says, like, you don't do this in the first round, but they're gambles that could pay off big. And I think the Bills are in a bit of a position to gamble a little bit with this. I don't need this pick to come in and produce in 2021 for me to feel comfortable about this team competing in an AFC championship game. It'd be nice to get a guy to compete right now. But if you really believe, if there's people in the room that believe what you just said, that this is a Jalen Ramsey type prospect, maybe he is on the board at 30 because you think, hey, man, if we can, maybe in 3 years after we get him back, get him his rookie year and a year of development in our system, we could have our next all-pro to play a few years with Trey and then figure out how we're going to pay all these guys. But then, you have that ability, which is really what the Bills are looking for to solidify cornerback too. But then he's got this cornerback class, man. And this is what I keep coming back to. It's a tough class to have this crap come up for you in, because there's good value behind him in round 2 that I don't want to deal with any of that headache, and I'll get a good player. Melifon was going to come in and play this year for me if I get him in the second round, or Sante Samuel Jr. can play all over the place right now. So maybe I won't take that risk and I'll get a guy and I won't even think twice about it in 5 years.
Yeah. So Will, thank you so much. We really appreciate generosity. It's awesome to be able
thank you very much
to be in that spot. And you make a great point. This is so weird for the Bills to be in this spot. And I was talking about that with my parents earlier. They were watching the Channel 4 show and asking about the guys that Tim Graham and Sal and those guys were projecting. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, those are good guesses. We don't know who's going to be in the top 29 picks. We're so used to picking 11th and 8th and 4th.
You got a good idea, yeah.
And 13th. Like, it was a lot easier to guess when we were way closer to the front. This is way, way harder to be able to project. And there are so many variables that come up. A guy like Farley, I think you make a really strong point that the Bills could afford a redshirt season for an elite player. I'd feel better if it was one of those things where, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he fell into day 2 and they're moving up from pick 61 to snag him because we already got somebody at pick 30, or because they traded down and got themselves an extra pick in day 2, so that way you're still walking away with 3 impact players this year and then also have him as a redshirt. But yeah, the depth of the cornerback class is the toughest part for me to get past, where they can pick a project guy like that with Tyson Campbell or or St. Juste or someone like that is also a project, but they get to start on right now and they get to work on and get a full year, with him playing. And I don't know. I think it's going to be tough. I made the claim on the prediction show earlier that I don't see any scenario where Caleb Farley, the way I said it was, there's no chance Caleb Farley's the pick at 30, because either there's information available that teams like Baltimore and Cleveland and New Orleans and Green Bay, good smart front offices, also have that he's not going to make it to 30, or if he makes it past those teams, the Bills aren't taking him either at pick 30. I don't think that they're vastly different from those other smart teams, and either they're going to pick him or he falls. If he falls into day 2, maybe there's something crazy. If the Bills trade back, maybe there's something crazy. I will be very surprised if Farley's the pick at pick 30.
Yeah, I don't know how the night's gonna fall for the kid. Maybe this is stuff that the media is taking and run with it. I think we're assuming there's gonna be some weird medical
last night,
things.
The ESPN Nation reporter for the Carolina Panthers projected him 8th to the Panthers last night. The guy, like our Marcel Louis-Jacques, like the guy very plugged in on the team, projected him 8th to the Panthers last night. So I mean, everything's an option.
Totally. So we'll see what happens on draft night, but Brandon Beane specifically talked about this in his press conference. And again, I think this is him covering all of his bases, but talking about this year being specifically difficult to pinpoint injuries and get real information. We're seeing this over and over again from reporters that NFL teams aren't trusting the physicals that were done in Indy. Like, there's problems with these physicals. There's problems with not being able to get your hands on these guys, get them into your campus. This is one thing about the NFL, and I don't spend a lot of time criticizing the head decision makers at the NFL and stuff, but they don't always adapt to change well, especially when it comes to like their decision stuff. So them, this is out of their element. Almost everything else was fine, right? They still had pro days. There was enough tape, but these medicals were totally out of the NFL team's controls. And that's not a comfortable spot when you're making multi-million-dollar decisions. These first-round picks aren't just us mocking and throwing guys up there. These are you work, in the corporate world. This is getting multi-million-dollar assets that are big assets to your team, and you don't get to really take stock in their medicals before you get them in your door. So any of these red flags definitely do hold more weight to GMs this year, I think, because you can't talk to the doctors that you pay and you trust. I don't know who you can trust with medicals. Yeah. It's just too touchy of a subject.
Well, and I've made the claim a handful of times. This is already going to be, because of those medicals, because of fewer on-site campus visits where you got to get the real inside off-field information, because of the visits you used to be able to have guys there, because you don't have the consistent testing numbers that you had at the combine, because so there were players that opted out. We're going to have guys drafted who haven't played in 18 months. We're going to have guys
and that's
drafted.
a problem for Farley too.
Yes.
Like that adds on to the concern. I think again, it's more cons at this point than maybe pros.
Yeah, well, and all those things, whether that's specific to Farley or just the draft classes in general, we're going to have more variance in the team-to-team draft boards than we've ever seen. Guys who are off one team's board who are ranked 15th on another team. Guys who are ranked 82nd on one board and 25th on another. You know, teams that are ecstatic about a guy, that they got their guy and they can't believe he made it to them, and people are going to boo them because they made such a ridiculous reach. There's going to be guys available into day 3 that none of us understand. Nobody's going to get why this guy's still on the board. Nobody's taking him. It is going to be crazy this year, all the things that come up. And I think it's going to be fun to be able to go through that, but it is going to be weird. I'd brace yourself for a lot of, holy crap, I can't believe this happened moments. One last guy before we get into our final mock draft. Another guy who has been kind of on the wish list and things that are there, Azeez Ojulari. Maybe some rumors of a knee issue with him. I haven't heard anything that it's going to require surgery, but just some questions of maybe a last-minute knee injury. And these are some of the things. I add another thing on to Caleb Farley. I think the poor guy got COVID and now isn't eligible or isn't going to be able to go to the draft because he got sick. It's just some of these things. You never know where these things are going to come up, and are they going to put that little twinge of doubt in a GM's mind? And
the one thing I don't think we discussed on Farley is it's not just the concern that there might be a requirement for another surgery, but that he had mentioned some toe numbness recently, and that it was part of the healing process from the original surgery. But you say that to NFL GMs that are about to take you, that your toes numb and you're having issues with your nerves. And you already had 2 back surgeries. That's tough. And I think fan bases, that's a tough sell too. And that's people got to keep in mind, not for all teams. I don't think the Bills have to do it with their team, but some of these GMs are going to have to turn around and sell this pick to their fans as what is going to get their franchise on the right track. And I don't know, that's a tough one there. So you don't have to worry about that in the 30s, but if you're picking in the teens and you're taking that guy, and then you have to turn around and sell him to your franchise that he is healthy and you know it. It's tough.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. As we pivot over here in looking at the mock draft we'll do tonight, with all the different things that are out there, you know, I think a lot of guys are making some really good points here in the chat that it's really hard to know who's going to make it, who's going to be there, what good players are going to be there, who's not. Who are some guys realistically that you're hoping make it? Do you think we have a legit shot at that, you know, we're hearing the names more frequently come up?
Well, so like one guy that I think will be there and will be in play there, Asante Samuel Jr. I think he's been a weird prospect because people on Twitter either love him and have him as one of like their top 3 cornerbacks, or he's like 7th, 8th for a lot of people. Like it's really weird.
It's basically either people are concerned about the height and the size, or they're not. Either they knock him unfairly, I think, for the size, or they watch the film and say, oh my gosh, this guy's fluid with awesome feet and great technique, and he's not afraid to tackle and plays bigger than his size. And those guys have him 3rd. And then the other guys are, sorry, he's 5'10", 180. That's too small for me. I'm going to make him 7th.
Yeah, and I think with the issues with Farley that are popping up here, I think there's a very real chance that he's a first-round target for not just the Bills but other teams. But he's a guy that I would be very comfortable taking there, and not waiting for the to see what happens in the second round, even though I've been an advocate of kind of staying in that second round. So he's a guy. I mean, a lot of these guys, I think that I see Bills Mafia wanting. Your Jalen Phillips, I can't see a way. I can't see a way that he's there. Like maybe a couple months ago, that's the problem with doing mocks too early, is it never shakes out when we get close.
So some of the names we spoil ourselves. So John asking here about wanting a young edge rusher. You know, I'm guilty as anybody. I've had mocks where the Jalen Phillips makes it, and Kwity Paye and Azeez Ojulari.
I'll run up myself,
and it's awesome. I will be ecstatic if those things happen. We need to get ourselves more around the names of Joe Tryon and Peyton Turner and Greg Rousseau and Jason Owe. if we're taking an edge rusher, it's one of those guys. Those top three guys are not going to make it to pick 30. Just like, and believe me, it's all over the chat. I want Greg Newsome real bad too. He's not making it to pick 30.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough.
Well, and I have some real bad news for you. There's a very real chance he makes it to pick 25 and we get excited. The chance he makes it past the gauntlet of Cleveland, Baltimore, New Orleans, and Green Bay, who all need cornerbacks and all need edge rushers, those 4 picks are going to be painful.
Yeah.
They are going to take
either
guys,
way for cornerbacks or edge. Like,
yeah,
it's just
they're going to
be...
take names that are going to be crushing to us.
Yeah.
So, we need to get our minds around Asante Samuel, Eric Stokes, even Tyson Campbell, Afeti Malfanu, whoever it might be. I don't think it's going to be Farley or Horn or Surtain or even Greg Newsome. I don't think those guys are going to be there. I think it's going to be one of that next tier, and there's nothing wrong with it. Those are really good players. We don't know who's going to be the best guys out of here. I don't think it's going to be from that group.
Yeah, and this is where this draft gets a little concerning to me is, again, the mocks aren't real. I'm not going to take too much stock in them. But there are scenarios that you run through, and almost in every scenario, I see a run on cornerbacks or a run on edge. And sometimes it's a mix of both these where Bills are at 30, and there's guys I'd be happy with to take at 30, but there's the value from who that player is to the guy that is going to be maybe a possible trade up in the second round, or the guy that's maybe going to be there in the second. Value just isn't deep. Like these guys that are kind of these second, third round prospects, I think is where the draft is at. I'm most excited about these first 3 picks because I think really it's top heavy talent wise there for me and at positions that the Bills need. So I get to that pick and I see some of these names that you're talking about, Tryon and the kid from Houston, Peyton Turner, and I like these prospects, but I like them better in the scenario you mentioned earlier, trade back scenario, or trading back up. I love the idea of trading
awesome
back
value
up
that falls to pick 61. That's
totally
fantastic.
Love that decision, and that's why I'm still not ruling out. I'm still on the rumor train, and I like Harris over ETN, but I'm taking either one of those guys in this scenario too, where some of these guys fall. I'm not opposed to getting I know you're going to give me a hard time, but I have them somewhere in that 15 to 20 range.
Sure.
And if a player's there because of the lack of respective positional value along, league wide, I'm happy to get a player of that value at that position versus, okay, I'm going to address a need, but the guy that would have been at 61, it's not a big difference from where I was. You're not, if you don't get one of these top 3 running backs, another running back's going to do well in this draft. You'll have some random 5th round guy that Hubbard might do well. He'll go somewhere and maybe do well. But I think if you get one of these top 3 guys on the Bills, they're going to do well. And it's going to be a fine pick that everyone's going to be fine with.
So I'm maybe not as strong of an advocate as Bruce of never going running back in the first round. I will say.
You don't love it.
I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think it's the best use of the asset. I think we can do smarter things with the asset based on, and the idea is
sometimes you got to treat yourself.
Over those 5 years of the contract, if you're getting Trey White value play, that costs you $18 million a year, and you just got a coupon for that $18 million gap of what you were paying on the rookie deal of $2 or $3 million for an $18 million player. If you get a killer running backs are like $7 or $8 million. Sure. You're just not. So that's the idea. Now, to flip that around, when I'm not talking about Todd McShay and people like that. Like draft people, I really, really trust. Dane Brugler, Daniel Jeremiah, guys like our Russell Page and Russell Brown and Christian Page. Those guys have Etienne and Harris 15th, 19th, 18th, 20th. Like all those guys have them as top 20 players in the draft, the top 20 graded players. So if we get the 15th graded player on Dane Brugler's board and the 18th graded player on Daniel Jeremiah's board at pick 30, who the heck am I to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe we wasted that pick. We just got what was supposed to be a top 15 or top 18 player by 2 of the smartest draft people out there. I always joke, I'll lull myself to sleep by going and watching Travis Etienne highlights. They're awesome. I'm going to be super excited about it. to do some other things with it would be my
I
preference.
still think you can do the other things, and that's what.
Yes.
Maybe it'll work out this way for us tonight, but maybe it won't. But I do think in the scenarios where I'm doing these things, and again, mocks aren't the end all be all, but I think there's enough prospects at cornerback, defensive end, interior offensive line. I think is a super sneaky need. I love a lot of the prospects that we'll talk about tonight. I think you can still address some of this stuff. Yeah. And as we've talked about, and I know it's not necessarily what Bills Mafia wants to hear, if you miss at a couple of these positions, there's free agents still available that are going to produce for the Buffalo Bills in 2021 if we give them a 1-year deal, and you still have another draft to address some of these positions. There's never been a perfect roster in the history of football. The Bills aren't going to change that with this draft. So I'm all about just getting good football players, and wherever I can find that value, I want to get it. Nick Lowell brought up somebody that Eric Turner did a nice little bit of a breakdown on today. Kadarius Toney could be there, and I'm not going to pound the table for wide receiver in the first round, but watching some of what he's doing, I can see how it fits into what the Bills would want to do, and I'm fine with trying to just outscore teams 50 to 40, whatever. Like, I'll get down with that football. That's fine.
And John brought it up here, and I think actually John brought it up about having guys get cut league-wide. I think a lot of fans would be shocked how many good players haven't even signed yet. Yep. There are some really good pass rushers, cornerbacks, safeties. There's a lot of really good players still out there who just haven't signed yet because, one, they're waiting for the comp pick formula cutoff, which is next week on Tuesday, and for the draft to go by for teams like the Bills, that everybody has a wish list of like 4 or 5 needs. Well, we're only going to fill like 3 of them with players that matter.
Probably.
We're going to have up spot that doesn't get filled with a draft hit that all of a sudden we're going to go in and be like, hey, guess what? We need to go sign X, and we're going to be able to go find that guy. And there are a lot of possibilities like that as well that we'll do some of that follow-up right after the draft and start to target in on those.
And those calls, just like the calls for trade-ups and the calls for trade-backs, Brandon Beane's already made all these calls with the agents that, hey, we really would like to bring Richard Sherman in. We're going to take a look at the draft, see how this shakes out. If we miss out, we're going to call you and sign a deal that next weekend. Like, that's how it's going to work.
Well, and, you add in, you mentioned Richard Sherman. Some of the other guys, they're legit cornerbacks that are out there that are not signed yet. And it's tough because you're going through and trying to figure out, okay, how is this all going to play? But, Casey Hayward, Steven Nelson from Pittsburgh, there's Brian Poole was a solid nickel guy, Michael Davis, Rashad Breeland. There were guys who were like legit players that are still out there. Artie Burns is still not signed. Then you go in at edge rusher. There's some guy. I mean, heck, I've wanted Melvin Ingram from the first day of free agency. He still hasn't signed with the team. Justin Houston, Ryan Kerrigan. Yeah. There are guys who are legitimate players that if we don't hit on somebody, those guys make our rotation and play and get snaps.
And the benefit of being the Buffalo Bills right now is this is something we've never had to experience before. When those still good names are there after the draft, the Bills don't get those guys. Like, nobody wants to come run it 1 year for the Buffalo Bills that are going to go 7-9. Like, now you have a good team. So even if other teams in the league are calling, there's maybe only 3-4 other places that could be more enticing to an NFL player right now than the Buffalo Bills. So if you're going to take a 1-year cheap deal, I'd ride with Josh Allen and try to get a ring on the way. Like, that's the point.
Well, and you add into that, we lost Dean Marlowe. If we don't draft a safety, Kenny Vaccaro, Trey Boston, Malik Hooker, Bradley McDougall, like, good players are still out there that we can go through. So we'll target that after the draft. We'll do shows going into those things. There are a lot of options to be able to go through.
But options are there.
Without further ado, we will now pivot to the way that we're going to go through this is to do a mock draft together, just like we've done each time. We're going to be able to have some fun, be able to go through some of the options that are there. Aaron and I will do it together as GMs to be able to have some fun and be able to identify what's there. We will leave it open for potential trade-ups and see what's there. If we want to make a trade, I think that just like Brandon Beane, we're going to treat it as though assuming that, we're open to it, but it's maybe not the most likely path. We'll let things get going.
I will say, I thought for a second you had my screen share because some of your tabs look like stuff I might have searched. Maybe. I don't know. I won't admit to it.
In theory, some may have.
Well,
All
you
right.
guys are all lucky Etienne's off the board. I saw that already. So
Okay. So, and just like we talked about here, some of the wish list guys, people ask me this all the time when I did my wish list. Oh, where's Elijah Vera-Tucker and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah? Exactly where they deserve to be. Pick 16 and 17. I'm not wasting time wishing for guys who are not going to make it to pick 30. Of course, if AVT or JOK make it to pick 30
with the grass mask.
or Tevin Jenkins, by all means, bring me these players. I would love to have Jalen Phillips fall to us. It's not going to happen.
Right.
JC Horn, Azizo Ojulari, Travis Etienne. Honestly, a sneaky wild card pick that I don't expect to be there, but people talk about JOK being kind of the, big nickel third safety guy. Trayvon Merrick is maybe not crazy as a wild card pick if it's truly best player available. But then leading up to it, again, these picks right beforehand, Etienne, Gregory Rousseau, Greg Newsome, a lot of guys that we like coming right off the board. So
yep,
we now look at the board. The number one player available, Najee Harris, the number one graded player that's there. We'll look at our key positions.
Yeah.
At cornerback, we have Stokes and Samuel Jr., Melifanu, who I think is maybe a slight tier below, but in that discussion with those guys. Mm-hmm. At edge, we have Owe. We have Joe Tryon. I know, Peyton Turner is painfully low on here. I think he's much higher than that.
I think he's in the conversation.
I think he's at the bottom of that tier, but I think he's in the tier with Tryon and Owe.
Sure.
Interior O-line, we do have Landon Dickerson, Creed Humphrey, Wyatt Davis.
Yeah.
I do think that a couple, I think Cosme actually might go in the first round. Leatherwood has been getting some buzz. I think I've heard Eichenberg Leatherwood and Eichenberg are both guys listed at tackle who can play guard in the NFL. So I think they're interesting. So
I'm offended by this. I took this personally. I love Melifanu.
In this spot, Zaven Collins is a question that comes up a lot. Collins to me is like if hey, what would we do if Trey Lance fell? Like, he's worth the pick, but I just don't. What are we going to do with him? Like, I don't want to pick a guy that I don't think is going to get on the field. He is not Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He is not some coverage monster that we can play as kind of a third safety, big nickel, stay in base defense because he can cover guys in the slot. Zaven Collins is a big thumper who, I don't even know for sure what his position is in the NFL.
He moves well, I get.
Yeah, he's a big, strong, powerful guy. Yeah.
He's fun, and there's fun highlights, and some team's going to get a good football player.
Oh, a team that needs a starting middle linebacker, that's great. I think that he can be that player. Downhill tackler. I think he's a really good guy. I don't see him fitting with Buffalo. People have thrown out that we could use him like Lorenzo Alexander. He does not have that kind of pass rush moves or the defensive line flexibility that Zoe had, and Eric did good breakdown showing he is not a pass rusher. That he's a linebacker.
I hate to say this, I don't need a Zoe. That was a little unique because of who Lorenzo Alexander was and some of the stuff that he could do. He also still was kind of a liability, to be on the field. I'm good. I don't need to replace the Zoe position. Just I don't need to force the big nickel thing. If it happens, great. If we get players that can do these things, fantastic. I don't think that it's a requirement of this defense as some missing key piece. I mean, this is still they didn't have the best year last year, but at the end of the year, I think they were pretty much.
So I think this is a spot where, honestly, with the way that the board is set up, this is actually one of the most likely spots I would be fielding phone calls to trade down. I have 5 or 6 players that I'm pretty equally interested in. I would be flipping a coin here. So I would be between Jason Owe and Asante Samuel Jr. in my mock in this almost exact scenario. I took Asante Samuel Jr. He would be my pick here. I think Najee Harris is a great argument. I think that some of the linemen are good arguments. I think there's people who like Tryon or Eric Stokes because of all those different pieces. This is actually a real scenario. I would want to be talking to Atlanta at 35, Philly at 37, even Dallas at 42, or 44, those kind of spots. What would you think about maybe even trading back from here?
Yeah, I'm fine with a trade back. I think so. Where I'm at with this is I agree with if we're going to make a selection here, that I'm going probably Tryon or Samuel Jr. But for me personally, I would actually be pounding the table for Najee Harris. It doesn't seem like that's the Bills guy. I think if Etienne's there, it seems like from the rumors that we can say that seems to be the Bills guy. I don't know that they're in on Harris or have the vision for him as much as I like him. Yeah. So I would be taking one of those two guys. Again, this comes back to the conversation where we were having earlier, that I don't know that the talent drop off in the second is going to be substantial from those guys to who's going to be available. Even if we just trade back a little bit, one of those guys still might be available. That might not be the guy somebody's coming up for. We can get Tryon in the early second. So yeah, I'm open to seeing what's available. I am not a trade value expert. I'm assuming that you are.
I've played with it once or twice.
Yeah, we can definitely beat the. I like the Draft Network's mock draft setup. Their trade values are not entirely accurate, so we should at least try to be realistic with them.
So this is the kind of deal that I think you could get, is that you'd move up a little bit in the third and then get a real shot of moving up and gaining that extra fourth rounder for a sixth. I think that's the kind of deal that you would get. I don't think you would just get a free third rounder moving down only 9 spots. I think this is the kind of deal that would be legitimate, in that you'd move up a couple of picks in the third round and you'd get some extra. You'd be able to move up and get what I really want, is that fourth pick in the range of being able to get an impact player. I think this is the kind of deal that we could get, or even, to be more realistic, giving up one of the fifth rounders to have to do it and moving up in the third and moving up from the fifth to the fourth. I think this is the kind of deal that would be realistic.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. If that's the move you want to make, let's do it.
I will offer that. See what we get here. We have it accepted. Now let's see what happens.
Landon Dickerson, which good.
Yes,
like if they can get up and get a fifth year on a guy, congratulations.
Yeah. So right afterwards, we lost Dickerson, we lost Tryon, and then honestly, it was a pretty good run for the Bills. That I don't think we're in on Radins. Again, Collins is a great player. I don't think we're in the market for a Freiermuth or Brevin Jordan. And then we lost a receiver and a linebacker. That was a pretty healthy run there.
Sure.
And now we're in a spot where if we take Asante Samuel Jr. at that spot, or Jason Owe at that spot, or honestly, Najee Harris at 39 is not a bad value.
Sure.
Those are now much more enticing picks to be able to take those. I will genuinely let you make the final decision.
Yeah, I would add to this list here, White Davis would be a fine value for me at 39.
Yes, absolutely.
I think Barmore would be a fine value for me at
Christian
39.
Barmore at 39. Eric is a huge fan of Christian Barmore.
I'd be happy with any of these types of picks. I think for this mock, I think, where we discuss should be between Asante Samuel Jr. here, because I do like him as a first round guy. I'm happy. This is a player that I'm targeting to come up early in the second round with other picks to come get. So if I can get him here, I'm happy. And then Owe.
And so the question here is, this is the way I would approach it if we were in the draft room, is that, hey, I don't know, what are the odds that we're going to get? I know another guy Eric likes, Elijah Molden, Fedi Melifonwu. Yes. Those are guys we like. What are the odds one of those make it to 61? They're here ranked 57 and 60, but hey, that's not a guarantee. Versus guys that we think, how do we feel about this tier, assuming we put Peyton Turner right up here in this tier, that there's a risk. What are the odds that we like having to drop to a Robinson, a Basham Jr., a Ronnie Perkins versus those other cornerbacks? That could be the tiebreaker and reason that you go Jason Owe or Peyton Turner here. I would probably lean Asante Samuel Jr.
Okay. Yeah, and it's a tough one. And these are the conversations. Because one of the things I'm thinking, too, let's go back to cornerbacks, is I see Asante Samuel Jr. coming in, and I think he immediately competes for that nickel role, in my opinion, with Taron Johnson. I think they, Eric, this is one Eric has brought up to me a number of times. Taron Johnson's contract is a sneaky need for the Bills, that's coming up, and that if they can replace a guy like that. But then I think Molden, it could also fill that role and compete for that role. So if he's there, maybe I don't get the type of player immediately that I would in Asante Samuel Jr., but I get a player that I think can come in and be Taron Johnson. We let Taron Johnson walk, and we fill that role with Levi Wallace as quarterback 2 or Dane Jackson for a year and address it in free agency or whatever. So there's plays to be made here to pass on Asante Samuel Jr., where I do think edge gets a little hairy. I do like Turner probably more than he's ranked here. I'd put him up in this list, in this conversation. It does seem like in the mock draft scenario, he'll probably be there for us the way it's going, which whatever, that is what it is. I'm also bigger.
And stuff, I mean, no one thought AJ Epinesa was making it to 54 last year. So that's not crazy that, hey, good guys are going to make it 61. We just don't know what position.
Yeah, but ultimately, the kind of long story short, and to keep this flowing too, is I like Asante Samuel Jr. here.
Okay.
I think I like Owe. I think it's a lot of development needs to happen still, which the Bills
can afford.
It's a lot of
projection. It's a lot of projection.
Can afford it. They can afford to have some projection, and put that on the line coach. There's a lot of projects right now on the defensive line that still need to produce. Like, we need Epinesa to get better. There's a lot of development going into him. There's a lot of development going into Ed Oliver. Like, we've got a lot of young youth. We need more, but I want to see those players continue to develop before taking on another high-end project. I'm happy taking a Rashad Weaver later on. Najee Harris is still here. You're crazy. Take Najee Harris.
No, but honestly, so people laugh. This happened last year. J.K. Dobbins was supposed to be – he went at pick 58 last year. He was not supposed to last as long as he did last year. They were not supposed to fall like that. I think this is very unlikely, but this is the kind of scenario that comes up in these drafts. And heck, I don't think Creed Humphrey is going to be there either.
Right.
But, let's go back and look here. All of a sudden, you saw a big run on a lot of the positions that we're looking at.
White Davis is a guy I'm targeting here, and he's gone. Molden,
absolutely.
So that scenario, I'm glad we didn't pass.
Yes, if we had have waited, we would have got crushed at cornerback. Yeah. So that was absolutely the right pick. And now you're in the position that I don't like not taking an edge rusher here, but there's no possibility you don't take Najee Harris at pick 61.
Yeah, no, it would be silly, even if he's not really the Bills guy.
The other trade-up that we did, we now pick again here at pick 73 and have some options to be able to look at.
Right.
And
we got Najee.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing to be able to look at.
Yeah, you guys got me all excited.
Yes, correct. Well, and now look, a guy like Alex Leatherwood, being able to get him at this spot, I think would be really exciting. Ben Cleveland, I think is interesting.
Kendrick Green. Is that what you just said?
Yes, Kendrick Green is a guy that I definitely like, and he's one of the key guys that I want to be able to get back up into that fourth round that I think we need that extra pick for.
Right.
And again, I don't know that it's realistic. Peyton Turner is still there here at pick 73. I think that would be a fantastic value. I would be, man, it's tough to pass. I like Leatherwood a lot to be able to get Leatherwood. A guy like that. It would be Leatherwood or Turner for me.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Turner. Leatherwood still has some injury concern, right? That's not unfounded that he could fall and there would be injury concern there. And edge just is still, we want to see some youth get injected at some point in this draft. And it really, like, I like Rashad Weaver. There's maybe a couple other guys, but it doesn't get great after this. You're really talking about developmental prospects.
Yeah, and it's tough to be able to look at the way, but being able to move up and get a player like that, I think, is phenomenal value to be able to look at. And now coming up here,
this board is kind of silly. Like, if all this happened, Najee falling, Turner falling, it'd be a good day.
So now again, we didn't pick interior line, so I do think that's a great place. And again, that's exactly why I want to look at this spot. I think this is a great spot to be able to snag, and I don't know who it's going to be, but being able to get one of Aaron Banks, Quinn Miners, Kendrick Green, Deontay Brown, Trey Smith, that fivesome is the exact kind of guy I want to be able to have an extra pick in that top 120 to be able to get, that I do not think is going to make it to the late fifth round. I think that's a great way to be able to go through there. I certainly have been leaning Kendrick Green. I know a lot of people love Aaron Banks. He has maybe less flexibility, but maybe he's a better guard than Green is, who can also play center. A lot of people love Quinn Miners. Who do you like out of that group?
Out of that group, I like Green. I think that positional flexibility is important to the Bills. I think they prioritize that on the offensive line, and he's just a mean dude. I think this is a guy that comes in as a fourth rounder and is immediately pushing John Feliciano for the starting job, which is all I've really wanted this offseason. Honestly, I probably like the leader of the Feliciano hate club, but I don't. I like Feliciano; he's fine. But I really want somebody to push for that position. If I can get that at the fourth, it's pretty solid.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great pick there. And now this is a spot where I do think the Bills are monitoring the board, and I don't know what the spot is. I'll let it go a little bit further here. They get into a range like this, and I think they're going to be looking to see, okay, what do we have so far? We have a corner who can play inside or outside. We think maybe long-term he's an elite nickel cornerback, but he can play outside. We have a bell cow running back. We have a power edge defender. We have a flexible interior offensive lineman. I don't know if this is a spot where they look at wide receiver, see who's there. Do they look at, is there a true outside corner or a all the way interior corner that they want to go for that be able to does anything? I don't know that I see anyone screaming on the board. I do think that this is a spot where they could look to trade up and be able to get a player. Interior defensive line is a spot that I do think maybe we missed a little bit of the window with some of the guys that were there. I think that I just saw a name I do like go. Tadaro Slayton went right before our Kendrick Green pick.
Yeah, so that's I don't hate Bobby Brown.
Bobby Brown is an interesting one that would be worth looking at.
And while interior defensive line is a need, I do think there's a little bit of a cushion there that you can get away with what they've got right now without having to force it. But you kick that can down the road and it just becomes a much bigger need next year.
Yes, I agree. So, again, I think that we've really left things open here. We haven't taken anyone from, safety is an area that I think is interesting. Darren Hall is a player that we've done a fair amount of work on that I think has a lot of flexibility and is a Bills kind of guy. I've heard a lot of buzz around Derek Forrest is a name that is interesting.
Let's see. Yeah, nothing. I like Powell. I'll take him in every draft, but he'll be around. I don't need it right now. I do think
from a project standpoint, Walker Little is a very interesting name at tackle.
Sure.
That's a guy that at one point was like a top 10 kind of pick.
Yeah, and that, like, I know that we're obviously everybody wants players that are going to be able to really contribute, but here you're really looking too for special teams, right? Like guys that are going to, if this pick is going to make the team on special teams.
For this one, ever since Joe Marino talked to us about Avery Williams, I've been very excited about him. And I know not just Joe, I just read, I wish I could reference him. Who's the guy down in Dallas who does all the special teams rankings every year?
No idea. No idea.
So there's a guy for the Dallas Morning News that's always famous for doing all the special teams rankings. He also scouts special teams guys coming out in the draft. His number one guy is Avery Williams. And that, you just don't see guys who break the college record for most return touchdowns and block punts and is good in coverage. Like, he's legitimately like Andre Roberts plus Tywan Jones, like that kind of player that you just don't see, and may be able to play some nickel cornerback, from a depth standpoint. So I think that's a guy that at this point in the fifth round, Heath Farwell is pounding the table for. It is that kind of guy. Although I do like Bobby Brown as well, but that's this kind of spot that I think if you took Avery Williams here and then used any of the remaining picks to move up for Bobby Brown, that's the kind of draft that they would put together.
Yeah, I'm fine with taking Williams here. What do we have left for picks at this point anyway? After
give me just a second, just a spot check. We have 3, so we did get back we have our later pick because I gave up our next fifth rounder.
Yeah.
So we have a 6th and a 7th. So
there's a bunch of people that don't want to hear this from me, but like that 6th and 7th almost mean nothing to me. Like I'm not sure these guys make the team. I don't even know when that it all shakes out. This is gonna be fighting for practice squad guys, probably.
Yeah, I think you could use that if Bobby Brown was there at pick 190, pick 200, and you wanted to move up and get him. That's the kind of spot you could just use those together.
Or whoever,
and get one
whoever
player.
your guy is.
Yeah, whoever you're targeting.
You want to make sure you leave this draft with. Sure, yeah, no, so I'm fine with taking Williams here. I think the path at this point and beyond is special teams for 2021, and hopefully you can develop him into something else. But it's so hard to hear, like, unless, I hear that from Joe in our mock there. But when we are watching prospects, like, I don't know about you, dude, but I never get special teams tape of guys. Terry McLaurin was the only guy, and that's because when I was standing for Terry McLaurin, people would be like, well, you should see him at Gunner. And then they showed me that. I was like, oh my God, I love this freaking guy. And but other than that, like, I've never scouted special teams from a player before. So that's a hard one when you get this deep into the draft of guys that teams would prioritize that do have that on tape, and the Heath Farwells of the world are all nutted up about these guys. That is, I don't know really many draft guys that are getting into that side of things and knowing who those guys are. But that's really who we need to be targeting.
Yes, and I think those are guys who can make a roster spot, or honestly, some of the devalued positions like a one-tech defensive tackle. Mm-hmm. I think that is the kind of spot you can get on day 3, where there are teams who just don't have one-tech defensive tackle on the roster.
Just because there's not enough human beings of that size that do that job.
Or teams that just don't run that kind of defense anymore.
Sure.
That they just don't use a one tech and they don't have those guys on their board at all. I think it's possible you can get a roster caliber contributor like Bobby Brown this late. I would be happy to take him this late.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I do think that now you're taking an upside shot. You're looking at, hey, this late in the draft, it's anyone who has a shot to make the roster. Like, what is a path that a guy could make the roster? I think at this point it would be, hey, do you have a freakish athlete at wide receiver that has a chance? Do you have a project offensive tackle that could be a swing tackle? Do you have a special teams coverage linebacker or someone like that? I know Jacoby Stevens is a guy who's kind of that, special teams guy, maybe a third safety, maybe a roving linebacker kind of player that Zach Hicks did a lot of nice work up on. I think those are the kind of guys that you're looking at on a day 3 late round pick, just to see who can make the roster. And a hometown boy, I've heard some rumors that Malcolm Kuntz may go higher than this, and maybe a guy who gets some looks earlier on day 3.
Yeah, at this point here, I think what you're trying to do is target guys that might not get drafted, and you want to make sure that you don't have to fight in free agency to land this guy, that you want to take the traits or you want to take whatever it is and get them in your building and have their rights without having to deal through the undrafted free agency, because you're getting pretty late here, right? Yeah. Like, this is it. Half the guys on the board, more than half the guys on the board, are going to be getting calls the next hour after the draft. So I'm wherever you want to go here. If there's a guy with traits that pops out to you that you want to finish this draft off, it's your birthday. I'll give you the 7th round pick for your birthday if you want it.
I like it. I appreciate that very, very much. And I think that the way that we've addressed this, we've gone 2 offense and 4 defense. I wish there was a project offensive tackle, swing tackle guy that was screaming to me. I'd be lying to you if I said I'd heard of any of these guys this late in the offensive tackle class. There are a couple guys. I don't think that it's crazy that if they don't sign a guy like a Jesse James, that a Luke Farrell or a Matt Bushman type big traditional tight end is out of play, that they may add that third guy to be able to go through. I'm going to address a question real quick. Jason brought up best punter available. I got bad news for you guys, but Matt Hawk's contract is a roster lock. Matt Hawk is the punter for this team.
Yeah.
We gave him a 3-year deal with guaranteed money. Matt Hawk is the punter for this team. We are not bringing in, maybe they bring in a Camp Leg or something like that, but we're not bringing in someone different for that.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by Malcolm Kuntz. The fact that we got Peyton Turner, I think the best shot to make the roster is add a safety that can play special teams. I think a Jacoby Stevens type. Oh, no, you want to know what? I'm going to do Darren Hall. I think Darren Hall is that kind of guy that can be that kind of safety, extra DB in there. That he's a guy I know that Eric's done a lot of work on, and that's the kind of guy who could make this roster compete with Jaquan Johnson and be able to go through there. I can't lie, Aaron. I think this is some of our best work. I think this is a really, really pretty draft. Being able to go through and all the mocks that we've done the entire time, to be able to go through and, maybe we had our best draft in the final one. I feel like that's a really fun way to be able to end the offseason. And although John's probably not wrong, there's no way that this is exactly how it works out.
There's no way any of the drafts we've done are happening.
Correct.
Let's be honest,
but I will say, if this night 3 years ago, DK Metcalf was a lock top 10 pick, and we were wondering if the Bills were going to take him at 9 versus at Oliver. He went 64th. No one saw that
stories
coming.
Every single year. There's stories of guys.
Maurice Hurst was a top 15 pick, and he went in the 5th round to the Raiders. What if Caleb Farley goes in the 5th round this draft? We don't know how these things are going to work out. So you're right. Do I actually think Najee Harris is going to be there at pick 61? No. But would it shock me if a guy that we've all seen universally projected as a top 25 pick is there at pick 61? No, that won't shock me.
We've seen it before. Yeah, that's not crazy.
I don't know who it's going to be, but I'd certainly be excited if this ended up being real.
Yeah, I don't know that all these guys are going to fall to these slots. I think that's the thing that's not real. I think there's a good chance Asante Samuel Jr. is not even on the board when the Bills pick at 30, let alone get him in the second round. Total chance of that. But yeah, maybe not every single one of those guys is going to have a chance to fall. Somebody's going to fall in this draft. Multiple guys are going to fall in this draft. Things will get weird. Draft day is weird. That's just what happens every year. So anyone that thinks that none of those scenarios are possible, I don't know. That's why Brandon Beane calls up ahead, calls back, because so many different scenarios can shake out. And all these teams have run mock simulations and stuff like that, and almost none of them are going to come true. Like what happens on draft night, there'll be something that nobody prepared for, and we're all going to be sitting on Twitter raging, how is the next DK Metcalf still falling in this draft? Like, what is everybody smoking? So things are going to happen. But here's what I will say. I've done a lot of these mock drafts. There's not a lot of scenarios, Greg, where I've left frustrated that I didn't get this one guy or I didn't get that other guy. Like I felt pretty confident in what I've been able to get, at least in that top half of all the drafts. Like, the only thing I would say that's a downside about this draft maybe is maybe too many picks, like leaving with that many guys. Sure. I'd rather leave with less picks because I don't think that they're all going to make the Buffalo Bills roster and won't be part of the future anyway. But my thing is none of these drafts that I've done, I've been upset about. Like, this is a really good Buffalo Bills team. There's going to be good players at all these picks. Like, there's we just talked through options every single where we've been. And I've been doing that now for a month on shows. And there's always available options at every pick that the Bills are at that are guys that I'd be happy to bring into this building and join this team. The Bills are going to get better starting tomorrow, and I can't wait.
It's a great way to talk about it and a great way to describe it that, short of them picking a quarterback, like I don't know that any pick could upset me. Like they could, like, honestly, Trayvon Merrick or, like Tevin Jenkins, like positions we don't even really need, Kadarius Toney or Elijah Moore. Like, I don't care. Like, sure. You could talk me into just about anything. Like, the Bills have a great roster. They're deep everywhere. Yeah. Like, it's going to be hard to make this roster no matter who we pick. It's awesome. Like, I'm going to be 100% fine. You want to know what? If we move some of our, I think John brought it up here, and I think a couple other people brought it up above. If we move some current picks for future picks, I'll be okay with that. Sure. Like, if we trade away picks for 2022 draft picks, okay. If that's our compensation for trading down.
In this scenario, we'll probably get at least something for Devin Singletary.
Yes. Yeah, if we get Najee Harris pick 61, somebody getting traded. Yeah. I don't know if it's Zach Moss. I don't know if it's Devin Singletary. Somebody's getting traded. Yeah. So, yeah, obviously we need to get hired immediately for our general manager skills and being able to maneuver this draft. Yeah. Any final thoughts for the people here to be able to, my biggest one is just enjoy these next couple days. The Bills are a good team. We don't need anything. We have areas that I'd like to add, but we're just going to add talent to an already talented roster. We already have a top 5 roster in the NFL. We have a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. We have a great coach. We have a great GM. Good things are coming, and our team's about to get better. This is fun. This is going to be a good time, and I can't wait to see the new guys that join our team.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Enjoy this. Like, I want it to work out. I want all the picks to work. I want all their highlights to translate to my team exactly how I've watched it and dreamed it all up. Like, I want this. It's never done that in my life. I've been a fan long enough to know that half these guys are not going to work out. The guys that I crush on are going to be on, journeyman NFL guys, most of them. But the Bills are going to get better. Most likely, they're going to get hit on a couple of these picks. Brandon Beane hasn't totally whiffed in drafts. They're going to hit on some picks. You said it, man. The Bills got the quarterback. Like, we saw the New England Patriots struggle through drafts on their road to multiple Super Bowls and struggling with drafts and not getting production out of the draft. I like the draft. It's super important. These are assets that you work hard to make sure you get right. The Bills don't need this to work out. Like, this is the best position they've ever been in. Like, I could take the team they've got and maybe add a couple free agents before the season starts, but I can take this team and I think I can get to the AFC Championship game today, like, without doing anything else. And you're telling me that I get to add a few players in the top 100 of the draft? It's like fantastic. I trust my scouts to find guys, but don't get too mad if anything happens that it didn't go the way you wanted to, or if Brandon Beane passes on your favorite cornerback at 30. Like, I get it, it's frustrating, but just the perspective of where this team is, it's okay to pass on those players, and I don't think it's going to hurt the Bills long term.
Yeah, and so one, I want everyone to take a moment and brace themselves right now. Like, sit there and just, kind of get ready and brace yourselves. There's going to be a guy on the board at pick 30 that you are super excited about, and they're not going to take him. Yeah. And that might be a different guy for each of us. That might be different players for all the different, people that are out there. They're going to have different valuations on some players. I hope, my biggest wish is that the guy that they pick is just this universally easy choice that everyone is ecstatic about it. Oh my gosh, I can't believe X fell to us. And that, if Kwity Paye is there, it's great. Sure, everybody run to the thing. If Elijah Vera-Tucker or Jeremiah Usu-Koromoa or Tevin Jenkins or, Greg Newsome or whoever it might be, if one of those guys are there, it's awesome because nobody's going to complain. Everyone's going to understand it. We're all going to say, hey, pick our guy, and it's going to be easy. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that we're going to see a lot of those guys come off the board in the 20s. And then we're going to make a good decision, and we're going to pick a good football player. And yes, it might be a guy that you got at pick 61 in another mock draft, and you're going to be mad and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe we picked him at 30 because I got him at pick 61 in this mock draft. Look at this tweet. That's just not how reality works. It's just not what's going to happen. It's going to be a good football player, and the best part is we have a smart front office with smart decision makers and good scouts, and we lost none of them this offseason. They're going to be able to help us. It's going to pay off.
Yeah, I'm super excited to see, and super excited to hear your experience of being at the draft. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, so for anybody who's checking it out, we are going to have a live show here at Cover One, live tomorrow night, all night for the draft. Live day 2, live day 3. We're going to be here for you the whole time. Maybe some fun watch parties from our Cover One Premium Slack members. I am going to be downtown in Cleveland as a live correspondent, calling into the show here, actually calling in with our friend Nate Geary on WGR. I'm going to be a live on-site correspondent for WGR, giving some reaction to the picks as well. Having a good time, being able to go down and experience the NFL draft in person. I figure it's literally like 15 minutes from my house. I can't really justify not going to the draft when it's 15 minutes from my house. So my best friend from college, my former college roommate, we got ourselves the passes. I have other people who tolerate me. It's actually the one that reminds me the most of you. So he's obviously cute. He's very handsome. Yeah. So he and I are going to be going down, having a good time, and being able to go through there. And we got our passes all set up and everything confirmed today. I got to bring down all of our documentation and everything and whatnot. But I'm really looking forward to it. You guys will see me calling in live to the show. I'll be having a good time, sending out all kinds of tweets and pictures, but experiencing the draft in full there for Bills Mafia and screaming our heads off when the pick is ready, or being frustrated that I was there for 4 hours for him to trade out of the first round and then having to do it all again Friday night.
Yeah, that's a very real possibility.
Very,
Yeah, no, I'm
very
jealous.
real possibility.
Yeah,
We
draft
just
is
did
something
it. We just did it.
I definitely want to check out a draft, especially now it's a traveling circus to different cities and stuff. So I'll be interested to see how the experience is.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Make sure you're checking out all the work that's been going on. Cover One's been killing it with the breakdowns. And as soon as the draft happens, we are going to be there to talk about all the players that are there. We're going to bring on the draft experts talking about it. We've got guys ready to come on, walk us through who did we just add to this team, how do we understand them. We're going to be there to break down all of those guys, and then we'll get into all the other content we have for you all off season long. So check it out. Make sure you're finding Aaron Quinn at Aaron Quinn 716 on the social media handles, the original Quinn on the Instagram. Come and find me on Twitter at Greg Thompson. Thank you for watching the Cover One Buffalo podcast. We are out.